room 2140 of the School of Education at Indiana University, a room in which I presented in 1995 and did video conferencing then with See You, See Me and PictureTell, combining two together. And we're doing Zoom in this case. We're not combining it with the Cisco system, but last Monday, a week ago, we did combine two video conferencing systems together in the room adjacent. So we repeated the experiment from 24 years ago, almost a quarter century later. I'm a quarter century older. I was 8 years old at the time, if you can do the math. So I've got many handouts posted to my website. If you go to trainingshare.com, trainingshare, one word, go to Archive Talks, and it's the first one listed. It will have all the handouts from today, but I will put a precursor on that. More are being added as we speak. More from 2019 are being added as we speak. I just sent my assistant a whole bunch of writing articles. So what you have are articles from 2017, 18, more from 19 will be there probably in 2 hours. So if you go back to that site. You also have my slides and a PDF of my slides there. And the last thing that you'll have is a listing. The listing of SSCI journals for the field of education. So rather new listing that we found in Wiki, a Wikipedia site maybe, and the people here have a copy of that. It's 12 pages long or 6 pages double-spaced. I have a website. If you go to my homepage with my name, kurtbonk.com, you click on Web Resources. In there I have a list of journals that you can publish in. Now that list of SSCI journals, you could counter against it and say, well, here's Dr. Bonk's list. Are these SSCI? We can check them against that SSCI list. The other things that I have at that Web Resources website include how to get jobs, a listing of jobs portals, and I have a listing of programs in the field. If you're a master's student wanting to get a PhD or a certificate student wanting a master's, I have 3 big lists. But the one for today's purpose is a list of journals. And I tap into that list all the time. There are over 100 journals. And of course, we're going to get somebody. Where was that coming from? That was you?
Yeah, that's because she was testing.
I wanted to make sure that they hear us.
Okay. You can all hear us, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, where was I?
Checking the journal list.
Yeah, okay. So
It's-
if you check if you're interested in publishing in SSCI journals, there's a piece of this talk I deleted last night before going to bed, and that is a piece related to a talk I gave in Taiwan in November about the focus on SSCI journals in Singapore, Taiwan, East Asia, Korea in particular, somewhat in China. They have Chinese SSCI. I deleted that part so we could focus more on writing tips and publishing here. But there is I think, too many people being enamored with publishing in top-tier SSCI journals, but I find myself doing that as well to some degree. And so you can go through the list and find the British Journal of EdTech, the Australasian Journal of Educational Technology, Educational Researcher, IRODL, EdTech and Society, which is being disbanded, but it's coming back to life again. EdTech and Society is a popular one that many people in Taiwan use. In fact, the Minister of Education in Taiwan got in trouble because his colleague got fictional reviewers of their articles, and he actually was kicked out of office because they had a huge problem there in terms of trying to publish in top-tier journals with fictional reviewers. So there's so much focus and attention on this that people do that they try and scam the system. There's so much attention in Korea, you can get a $5,000 bonus for every SSCI article. In China, you can get tenure for an SSCI article. In Taiwan, you can run a center for 1 or 2 SSCI articles. There's so much focus. In Singapore, you cannot get tenure without a whole bunch of SSCI articles. It's the big focus so they can improve their rankings. All these universities want to be in the top 100. Not everybody can be in the top 100. When they get in the top 100, they want to be in the top 50. They get in the top 50, they want to be in the top 20, and then they want to be in top. So it's a huge, vicious cycle, and I have a whole talk, kind of comical talk, about the problems of the SSCI focus. Instead of doing that, last night I found a whole suite of articles related to 2019 that I've updated my talk with. So as a precursor to this, I'm currently working on a book on MOOCs and open education in the Global South that was supposed to be due last night. But we're still missing a chapter or 2, and so we got an extension till Monday. Part of the reason to agree to do today was I thought the book would be in. The book is not in, we're still working on it, and I'm also grading papers and many, many, many other things. So this is a stupid thing to do this talk right now at this time, but it's also strategic because I didn't want to do it next week because I want to start writing my own next book. And so to be a successful writer, you have to map out time and don't delay. You don't say, okay, I can just do this next week and do this other stuff next week. And if you start doing that, you run into a vicious cycle. So I left this for today. We'll see if I make it through. But part of the reason is if you do free up time, you can then relax. If you do a lot of things on the front end, as I told my doc student Meetin, she took 12 credits her first semester at 13. She was able to free up time to do many, many other things. That's my philosophy, is do a lot on the front end. That's not the philosophy that many people in my department hold. They'd rather have first-year students do less credits. I recommend doing more and freeing up time later on. Well, the same is true of doing this talk now. So then the summertime, or in the summer, I used to teach intensive 8-day courses. And then I'd free up much of the rest of the summer for writing. So that's just another little caveat there. There are articles, a whole bunch of articles that are posted that you will find at trainingshare.com. If you can't find them, send me an email. And most of you have my email. If you can't find my email, cjbonk@indiana.edu or kurtbonk@kurtbonk.com, I think. Or kurt@kurtbonk.com. Something, I don't know. Anyhow, you'll find articles in there that relate to successful writing, and let me just see if I can read off a few of these. And my writing tips, which we'll go through here in a second. One article is called "How Do I Get My Name on That?" That was in Tech Trends. Another advice article from Cecil Smith, who I went to grad school with, writing advice for new faculty members. An excellent article that he wrote, and it took him 15 years to publish it. He wasn't planning to publish it maybe initially, but he wrote it for AERA 2002 or so, and it got published 2017 or 18 or something like that. So you'll see many articles related to writing tips in that suite. And I actually have a couple extra of how to get my name on that if someone wants to grab that. And then I have another one from Springer on a cheat sheet for getting published. I have a few extra copies of that one as well. Responding to reviewers is another article that you'll find in there. So how to respond to reviewers. We'll talk about that during this session. Now, last night, like I said, there are a whole bunch of articles that came out in the past couple of months in the Chronicle of Higher Ed and in Inside Higher Education. So I'll be talking about a bit of those as well. Now, do I have my PowerPoint slides somewhere in here, Khadija, so we can get these up? And can anyone go into the Zoom meeting and just ask questions, make sure people can see this? Just mute your microphones, but just put in the chat window and say, can you see the slides? Can you hear me okay? That kind of thing. And I'm not sure if we'll be able to see the slides. We might have to get ETS back here again. Like I said, this is a tricky room. So.
Well, you just gone.
You want to go get that guy again?
Yes, it's not.
Thank you.
It's not needed.
So while we're going to get that guy, then one of the handouts in there has many of my writing tips. As you'll see, 30 on one side and I think 30 on another side. The one says 10 years before and the other one says 10 years after. And so the 10 years before has 30 quick writing tips for starting an academic career. And I'll be going through many of those writing tips in there. On the back side, it has 20 writing tips and publishing tips, along with the summary of the article by Cecil Smith on getting writing support and writing help. So yeah, you'll see that in there as well. Maybe I'll grab a couple of these real quick. Well, we've got an assistant here. Thank you, Joshua. Oh, we just got it now?
So
We got this, but
you're
we lost
using a
the-
video camera, correct? Or the Zoom meeting, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got to do it through video conferencing. So this should be able to make sure we still have our video conferencing. Yes, we do. Let's see if I can get out of that. Yes, okay, so, all right, so we should have somebody on the far end, and then content, sources. You need to select PC
Okay.
And then that gives you your content. So content, slides are on the right. So it's going to split screen. People on the other end are going to connect on the right. Your PC will show.
And can I show videos or not?
It should show videos as well because your whole PC is over there. So if you
Okay.
have a video,
Not right away, not till much
Yeah.
later.
one thing we can do on this one is do that really quick. So you see that there. Now this stays up here, and you've got this over here.
And so I shouldn't move.
You can do that. So that is there, so you can see it. And then the keyboard and mouse here. If you have this guy plugged in or something.
Yeah, I've got
Yeah, you can use the clicker.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I've titled this, and you guys are around during lunchtime if you have problems?
Well, oh yeah. Same as on lunch right now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so we're 15 minutes in, now we're getting started. So I've titled this the G3 of writing tips and publishing, gentle guidelines, great stories, and gigantic scholarly gains. That's not the title that you saw earlier when you got the handout, but I'll go through parts 1 and 2. Part 3 I deleted last night. Part 1, the process of getting published and selecting journals and academic information resources, predatory journals, people who prey on, when you graduate, you'll get someone from Germany asking to publish your dissertation. Don't, okay? Lambert Publishing will write you. You'll get something email from Lambert. Anytime you get an email from Lambert, just delete, ignore, or print it out and have fun with that article and, make fun of it or something. And then take the plunge and try and publish, and then we'll get through some writing tips. Now, what's missing is the bonus tips. I've got 10 bonus tips at the end that I've added in, a couple of them late last night. Slaying eye monsters, detailing the pros and cons of SSCI. I have the movie Monsters, Inc. synchronized to Slaying Eye Monsters, but I'm going to skip that. And I'm going to start with this series of writing tips that came from Rebecca Schulman in the Chronicle of Higher Education during the past few months. And I printed out most of our articles, and there they are. I knew I had them here somewhere. And so these will be the 2000, this one's 18, but the rest will be 2019. And in there, she talks about things like the worst writing advice you ever got. No, we don't have handouts for everyone. These will be posted to the web. And so she's got a lot of little tips, like the worst writing advice you ever got. For instance, you must rise at 4 o'clock in the morning or 4:30 in the morning and do your writing. That's a stupid idea. That's when I go to bed. A much better idea is to do, if someone could mute the microphone. We got someone who's just jumped in. Thank you. No, we've got a problem again.
I think that's me.
Is that you?
I think, yeah.
Okay.
that's good.
So instead of doing that, I tend to work late when there's no emails instead of in the morning. I mean, you don't have to get up early in the morning. You have to create your own schedule, in effect. Don't get conditioned to what other people do. You have to find the way you are productive and the way in which you succeed. Some people are good at early rising and write books and go back to bed. My chiropractor does that. She's got 6 or 7 books on display, and she wakes up at 2 or 3 in the morning and writes and goes back to bed. I can't do that. Here's a second article that she published in the same series, Don't Spend Your Holiday Break Writing. Her point was that we all need time to step away and take a break for a few days or a week or whatever to refresh our brains. Again, that's not something that I totally agree with either. If you're in the flow of writing, you can continue to write during your break time. That might be the more successful times, but you also need to schedule time in which you get away. It might not be during holiday breaks. In fact, personally, I don't believe in holidays. But I believe in breaks. I just take them when I want to take them. I think everyone's structured to take their Christmas break or a holiday break at the winter or their 4th of July or for me the holiday is Halloween, and 4th of July. Those are my favorite holidays of the year. Hardest part about writing is restarting. Once you leave something, I've left a book I'm working on 2 years ago. I haven't touched it. This summer I'm going to get back to doing that. Once you leave something, it's very, very hard to come back to it. And as a grad student, I had several papers that I was a very short revision away from finishing. I never finished them. And they're probably some of the most in-depth work that I ever done, and maybe some of the best scholarly work I ever did, I've never published. And so I was big on theory in the past. And boy, we had some articles, one on cooperative reading programs that was a 30-minute revision away from Review of Ed Research, the top AERA journal. I didn't do it. So be careful, because once you stop for 6 months or something, you go on to something else. So something to be cautious of. And step away from the delete button's another one. So that earlier one's February, this is March 31, meaning that if you think your work is not so good, crappy-ish they might say, don't delete it. Put it in a file. I put it in a file called unused text, or when I delete something from an article, because they have to cut it down to 6,000 words, I call it cut text. And I take the cut text and I use it as starter text for the next article. Okay, so that's a way to get your brain going, because we all face writer's block. We all face problems when we write. And one way to overcome that is to have just some extra words, extra references that are sitting there just waiting for you to use. Recently, I've decided to save all the articles. So I have a file where I save all my publications every year. I've also, in that same file in 2019 now, I'm saving all the drafts of the different articles and the cut text. I have a folder. And so when I'm working on something now, I can go to those folders of stuff that, see the progress of my papers and look at the things we caught and find all the references. So I don't have to go to all the different files. I can find the references and so forth. But again, step away from the delete. Don't just delete and then, you spend time thinking about it. If you spend time thinking about it, it may be worth something, and may have to repackage it. So now I want you to think for 99 seconds with someone next to you. So we'll just do the two of you on the back end, the two of you, gentlemen in the middle, and the two ladies on the end. And people who are remotely in the chat window, what are some writing dilemmas you're currently facing? Just share that with the person next to you.
Right now, I got some idea, but I need to find a flow to put the missing pieces together. And because I'm just
Writing dilemmas are you facing?
my first year, I don't know what might be
Which part to start
pieces I
with?
need to put them together, and the other one
What's the
is
focus on?
English.
Okay. Anything else?
Language barrier.
Which one did you decide? How was it
For
missing?
me, it's more like I'm working on a topic. I want to know how can I restate, how can I paraphrase what the authors are saying, because with many articles published on the same topic, I find it tough to say it without plagiarism. How can I say it differently? That's my dilemma right now. And there is also a starting trouble, of course, with that. Then you start it and
Okay. On your green card in front of you there, write down that dilemma. Just so you remember what that writing dilemma is, and we'll try and address it here in the end. What writing dilemmas are you facing, or dilemma, key one? Okay. Is it resolvable? Well, how would you rank it on a scale of 1 to 10? Difficult being a 10, really difficult being a 10, not so difficult being a 1. How would you rank it? Brahma? 1 to 10. Well, low would be 1, to high be 10. Difficult challenge?
No, it's not a
In
very
the middle,
difficult
not so
challenge.
hard. Meena? 1 to 10. Easy, your challenge, or hard?
Hard.
Pretty hard? You told me, that seemed pretty easy. Omida?
Probably 6, 7,
6, 7,
7, 8.
7, 8,
6, 7.
6, 7,
10.
10. 10. What's the 10?
Very hard.
What is it?
I want to know how should I make my knowledge climb, how to paraphrase without taking the gist of it from other articles. It's being said by many authors.
How do you say something smart that are being said by
At the
other
same
people?
time.
How can I also sound intelligent?
Yes,
Without
exactly.
stealing words from someone
Yes,
else.
Exactly.
Thesauruses work real well. Trust me, I go online, so that's something I'm doing when I write. I'm constantly typing the word into Google and looking for similar words that might sound as good. You know, not all of it's going to flow in my brain the first time. It may be in the 6th draft of the paper I change the word. You have to revise and revise and revise. You can't just turn something in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd draft. Typically it's the 6th or 7th, and you know, oftentimes if you do that many drafts, you're going to come up with all sorts of unique words that are way far away from the, and you'll create your own distinct voice over time. Number 6?
Yeah, 5, 6.
5, 6, okay. Can we make sure that the 2 people that just came in get a couple of the handouts that we had for everyone? Yeah, there we go.
Dr. Bonk, we got a couple of
People remotely?
people from the
And
online.
what do they say remotely?
Some of them are saying about determining the topics to write about, procrastination, having big time of block to focus on writing,
Right.
narrowing topics, keeping a bibliography, struggling with language issues, and coming up with novel findings in the discussion.
Coming up with null findings?
In the discussion.
Yeah, that's a big issue that graduate students worry about, that you won't find anything, so therefore it will not be published.
Yes.
You know, and that's an issue of experimental design research out there. There's also the opposite end, that everyone finds something. If you only publish things that get found, that means every intervention in education is successful. That's a misnomer, that's a mistake. So we do need to publish null findings at times. It's a quandary that we all enter into. Do we give up on a study where we didn't find anything? Well, I think that's sort of it depends on the topic, but most topics where you don't find anything you should attempt to be published. It's strong research, you know. Keeping up the bibliography is an issue for all of us, and many people use EndNotes or Mendeley, you know. I used to use my brain, but I need to use one of those as well. I've been fairly successful by, again, saving files with references in them, and I know what article it had that reference, and I just scan through. You know, Mendeley will speed things up, sure. I haven't required that so far. I probably should. I'm thinking about moving to one of those sources myself. What were some of the other ones? Procrastination.
Yes.
Okay, we'll address procrastination in here. What else?
Determining topics to write about.
How do you find interesting topics to write about? Oh, among the ways to find interesting writings to talk about are reading across your field in different fields and looking at the intersection between fields. Number 2 is to meditate when you're on a plane and things just pop in your brain. Go, you know, exercise. You imagine how many things will come into your brain when you get away from the desk and you get away from your everyday experiences. Some people believe in journaling. I'll talk about journaling at the very end. Some people believe in mind mapping kinds of ideas and just free writing and waiting. Some people get over some of the writer's block by just turning their monitor off when they type. And that's been studied in many ways, looking at generating text without that critic in your brain looking at that text and so forth. Let's look at some of the process of writing and advice. We're going to talk about time, habits, support. All these things are important. As I mentioned, number 5, starter text. Having that starter text can overcome a lot of dilemmas that you have just by having that there. And there's oftentimes I will not use a single word from it, but it got me started. And all of a sudden I have 7,000 words written. I delete it all again. I use it next time. You know, it's amazing how that will come into play. Creating your own writing habits. How do you write? When do you write? Where do you write? Finding that comfortable space to write from, or spaces. Moving, as I do, to Panera sometimes to write when I have a time in which I can write where there's social things going on around me. Other times I need to be really focused without anything, and sometimes I need classical music or new age music playing in the background. Other times, you know, you have to find that for you, what works best for you. So we'll get into that as well. We'll get into issues of journal awareness. What journals are tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 kind of journals. And then doing all this while you're doing other things, service-related things for your department or your university, teaching-related things, family-related things. How do you balance all these things together to find yourself as a successful person? Hopefully some of the things that you'll hear today or you'll get from these handouts will provide that for you. And so some things will fall out of class projects. I've had many students who take a class project and refine it and submit it for a journal and get it published. Other things fall from grants that you write. When you have to write a grant, you have to write some starter text, and that text can be reused for a conference paper, then it's reused for the journal article. That small grant, short grant, get your brain going, that you're not so overwhelmed with a 6,000 word paper or 8,000 word paper. Some people get literature reviews published. Meena got her systematic review of the research with Anissa Sari published on a systematic review of the MOOC research. It was a systematic or meta-analyses of the research seem to be more and more important as we get the proliferation of research. You need someone to do those kinds of things. Now, literature reviews are harder to publish, but sometimes there are calls for topics. Yesterday there was a call for virtual teachers' papers, so PDAs and things like that. If you've written a summary of PDAs, you might be able to go into that special issue. And also, there's also the notion of collaboration. I won't pick on Meena again, but she's collaborating with a former student, Yoon Jo An, who was my student 15 years ago at North Texas now, on gamification of MOOCs. She's collaborating with Dr. Lethbridge's team for an article. She's collaborating with another former student of mine in Korea on an article. So you're finding those collaboration and partnerships and things like that. I tend to only work with, most of my things are with former students of mine, typically. I don't work with current students. No, I'm just kidding. But it seems like a lot of my work today is with former students who've come back to work on my teams again, which is kind of fun. What is the target audience of that journal? You have to think about that. Who are the readers? Who's going to read that article? That's important. Who are the authors that you read? Where are they publishing their stuff? That's a big factor. That's a key factor in all this. Does your work match the scope that's listed and the mission that's listed in that journal? That's another thing to consider. Look and read that. Read what they accept. And as Meetin and I know, there's been a couple we've submitted with former students of mine that got immediately rejected because it didn't fit the scope of that journal at this time, and some change. Like IRODL has just changed its scope, and right now they're not accepting things for 6 months. They got too many. You have to keep up on what they've published at their website. So what's the journal turnaround time? Computers in Education was doing 6 months just to get a reviewer, let alone another year for reviewing the dang article. They've changed that, I heard recently, and it's gotten better. But what's the review process like? How long will it take? And some are much more lengthy than others. Acceptance rates. And do you know the editor? I'm finding over time I'm getting to know more and more of the editors, and there's nothing wrong with writing to the editor and saying, I've got this article, or does it fit this journal? How long does it take to review? It's nothing wrong with writing to them. And where do you find a journal that fits? You can look at the Social Science Citation Index. You can look at the list of journals. By the way, the two of you who came in late, I'll just share that with Dolnoza and with Jennifer. Yeah. So they can take a look at that. That's a list of SSCI journals in the field of education. That will be that's in the handouts. There's a European listing as well. So where to start with practitioner journals? There are a number of more practitioner-based. In our field, we lost EdTech magazine a couple of years ago because the owner died. We lost a big practitioner kind of journal. There are other ones out there. How do you find the journals that have wider citations, that have wider audiences and things of that nature? How do you know? Well, anything from AERA is going to have a wide audience. They got 15,000 people that go to their conference every year alone. Others you're going to know will have smaller. We'll also talk about refereed and non-refereed. We'll talk about tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 kind of journals and where to start in all this. So among the top tier journals, instructional science on the right-hand side, you may have run into a professor on this campus by the name of Noriko Hara. Noriko was my student in 1995, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. She was an IST student, and I was an ed psych professor at the time, so I was her minor advisor, I think. And she studied computer discourse analysis of a class that we taught prior to OnCourse. It was using First Class, I think. That article has been cited thousands of times because it got in Instructional Science. It's one of the top tier journals. It connects psychology people and ed tech people together, Instructional Science. It's more of a European journal. It's very hard to get in. Internet and Higher Education is cited a lot. They do a good job. The publisher does a good job of promoting that journal. It is not open access. I used to be on the review board. It's one of the higher level journals out there. Ed Tech Research and Development, ETR&D, I'm going to be doing a special issue on systematic reviews of the research. And we'll put a call out in June. But normally I don't publish in it because I've had it's a tough one to get into, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of reviewers. And so I've got one, I think, only in there over all my time. British Journal, I have 1 or 2 over all my time, maybe 2. That's also been pretty hard, but we're trying that one again now. They've changed editors, but these are some of the top tier journals out there. There are other ones. You get the second tier like Tech Trends or Journal of Education and Computing Research, where I used to be a reviewer for a long time. That's one of the oldest journals in our field, JECR. And the American Journal of Distance Education. You may disagree or agree on some of these, like Distance Education is an SSCI journal. We might list that as Tier 1. Do we list all the SSCI ones as Tier 1 and those that aren't SSCI as Tier 2? And then the exploratory or new journals that are just cropping up here, like Contemporary Issues in Technology and Teacher Ed, International Journal of Online Pedagogy and Course Design, Interactive Technology and Smart Education. These are mostly our newer journals out there, and we might call those Tier 3. As a faculty member, a new faculty member, you want to avoid Tier 3 journals, but you never want to discard any publication. I mean, everything is helpful. Your department will say this will not count. Your department will say a book chapter does not count. Your department will say that conference proceedings do not count. They'll say that articles in Tier 3 journals and even Tier 2 journals, they only want Tier 1. If you're in Singapore, only Tier 1. Well, all that's fine and good guidelines, but in the end, when you review people for tenure, if you've got 14 publications that are peer-reviewed and you got another 14 proceedings and book chapters and whatnot, they will count those to get you, if you need 15, they will count, in the end. So, don't complain about something that didn't get in the top tier. Just get it published somewhere, move on to something else. Subscribe to, how do I get ideas? I subscribe to things, and oftentimes the full morning I'm just reading stuff from other people that are, in other journals. The Chronicle of Higher Ed, Inside Higher Ed, Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, all the news out there. That gets my brain going on what's happening. And then there might be a list of new research articles in a journal, and I'll look through those for articles that are interesting, make a copy, send it to my team. But how I get a lot of new information is that I save a screenshot of it and the link to it. I save the URL to it. And then I make a macro file. It's now got 1,400 screenshots or 1,500. And when I have to do a talk like this, I go through it. When I have to write a paper, I go through that list. It has the author name, the date, the URL, and the title, and a screenshot. And then I can move on. Then I've saved it in a file. It's a PowerPoint file, and I move on. Others have other ways of saving things. And then I review it for themes. Are there current trends like in personal digital assistants or in AI or something that I need to be aware of if everyone's publishing? Lately, writing articles are in high demand apparently, because everyone's writing tips about writing and being a new scholar and all that. Then I share some of those things in Facebook and Twitter to get other people's reactions and see what they think about that particular article. And I might write to the person who wrote the article. So last month in Tech Trends, what's his first name? His last name is West. He wrote an article about self-publishing a book for EdTech classes, Rick West. I wrote him an email. I got a response. The month before, someone wrote the history of the field in Tech Trends. I wrote her an email. She's at Wyoming. She wrote me a response. So don't be afraid to write to the person who wrote the article. You'll get maybe another article from them or something else from them. You get a connection. When you go to the conference, you can talk to them and so forth. Now, academic resources that are out there, like EndNotes and Mendeley and other kinds of things, in vivo for software analysis, tutorial services on your campus can help, and getting some support there, as IU does provide. But you can also use online tools like Grammarly and other things to look at passive voice and, other issues that might be embedded in your articles. You can also look at impact factors of the journals, and that will start to indicate whether or not this journal is predatory or not. You can look at the Citation Index at Google Scholar, Web of Science, and impact factors there. You can look at whether the article is open access or not open access. For some people in some disciplines, they can't publish in open access. I don't know what those disciplines are, but I've read about this recently that maybe it's, I don't want to throw out, I'm thinking it might be engineering or something like that, where they are, if you go out for tenure, maybe it's biology, I can't remember the disciplines, but in education, more and more articles are free and open access. If you do open access journal articles that are also SSCI, that's the best of both worlds. So EdTech and Societies, open access and SSCI. International Review of Research on Open and Distributed Learning, SSCI and open access. There are a couple other ones out there from your list, and if you focus and target on those, Australasian Journal of EdTech is SSCI and it is open access. You get the best of both worlds because you can use those articles in your own classes. You can share them easily with other people and you're not impinging on copyright in that case. And the open access tend to be cited more, so your scholarship will go up. You'll be cited more if you publish in open access articles, open access journals, I mean. Your Google Scholar rating will go up. People will cite you. Now, that being said, that instructional science article is not SSCI and it's been cited thousands of times. But it came out in maybe 2000, so it's almost 20 years it's been out. Academic information resources from Feng-Ru Xu. Now, Feng-Ru is an alum of IST. She's got like 5 degrees from IU. And her dissertation was on she's IST. Her dissertation's on badminton coaches. Okay? And Olympic ones. So she didn't do a traditional IST dissertation, nor do you have to if you're in the field. So she's also got a library master's degree, and I think maybe a language ed one, and many other things. She says consult a librarian because she is one. She's in the libraries at Kent State University in a tenure track position. Visit the journal website. Reach out to the editorial board, as I already mentioned. So scan the websites, reach out to the journal, look at the aims and goals, look at the peer review policy, see if there's a fee. Increasingly, journals are having fees attached to them. Sometimes you have to be cautious in the field of education if there is a fee. A couple times, my colleagues wanted to get published. They paid the fee. We were published in it. Sometimes these journals might be deemed predatory in nature if they're asking for a fee. Other times, it's very legitimate. So in the Public Library of Science and genetics and chemistry and so forth, they make the journals free to the world, but the authors have to pay a fee, and often it comes out of their grants. And it's a pretty big fee, if I'm not mistaken. If you go to plos.org, you will see some of these journals that are high-level journals in the scientific fields and also open access. Then look at the DOAG, Directory of Open Access Journals, and OASPA, Open Access Scholarly Publishing Association. They'll indicate some of the journals out there that are legitimate and so forth. Again, look at impact factor. How frequently are the articles cited from that journal? The rank, higher the rank, the higher impact factor, the better the rank. The calculation is dividing the number of times articles were cited by the number of articles that were citable. It is usually based on a 2-year average. That's how you get at the journal impact factor. I didn't know that until I worked with Feng-Ru and we gave a talk at AECT related to this. So you can also get a citation journal report. There's links to different things that you can access. Predatory journals, fake journals, sham journals, they try and make money off you in the open world. I've been a couple of times had to reread the email that I got, and often they'll find an article that you've written and then say, we like this topic, could you come publish with us, blah, 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 blah. You'll get the same form letter from a number of different areas. If the journal asks for a submission fee, it's likely to be predatory, but maybe not. If it promises fast peer review and a fast publication, it's probably predatory, okay? If you get spam emails and are sent to all sorts of people out there, just a spam sent to thousands of people that published other articles, it's likely to be predatory. Newness and quantity, a very new journal that consists of a high quantity of articles in one issue, it's likely to be predatory. If they're just getting all these people to pay, and then they publish. Inconsistencies in the scope and content and the journal title and the contact address. If there's something that doesn't look right and you want to, it's probably a predatory journal. And there are people paying attention to the dark side of publishing today and articles written in Nature and other places that call into question this age of mass publishing and publisher perish and all this kind of stuff. Sham journals, sham articles. con artists are stealing the identity of real journals to cheat scientists out of their publishing fees. So it sounds like the real journal, but it's not. That's another thing we have to be cautious about. Scientific articles accepted, but so are your personal checks. Okay, and so, dear sir, we are happy to announce that the International Organization of Scientific Research have come to under AQCJ 2017 top 10 journal rankings. It was calculated on the basis of Google Scholar, published, blah, 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 blah. Papers are invited September 18th from all the fields of engineering, management, medical, dental, pharmacy, applied science, nursing, humanities, and science, social science. The submission date is, regards Director Generals, a unit of International Organization of Scientific Research. That's a predatory article, okay? Here's another one. This is written to Feng Ru and myself for an article we had published a few years ago in EdTech and Society. And we've gotten, that article has gotten many predatory people writing to us. Your article, under the understanding of self-directed learning, blah, 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 has impressed us a lot. You're very impressive people. We want to publish more impressive stuff from you. Papers attracted attention from researchers and scholars specializing in open ed, open courseware, starting with the aim to promote communications. We invite you to send an unpublished works of similar themes to our journal. We are also quite forward to receiving further research on the published paper. You can refer to us at educationjournal.net submissions. On behalf of our editorial board, it is privileged for us to invite you to join us as the editorial board reviewer of, so they also trying to get me to be a reviewer at the same time. Now, sometimes I get a thank you for joining our review board, and I never agreed to be on a reviewer, and then 5 minutes later I get an article to review. And I never agreed to this happens a lot, okay? So, you know, it's just, there's a lot of weird scamming stuff going on. I wrote one back and complained. Actually, sometimes it happens where a friend of yours will recommend you for, like in one case, I think it was, they were doing a special journal issue or they were doing an edited book and they recommended me to be one of the reviewers for it. And so they said to me, thank you, without asking me actually I want to be on. They were nice people and all that. And I just say, hey, this is not. So, here's your abstract, here's your article. Best regards, Jesse Wright, editor of Education Journal. Selecting a journal, be aware of predatory journals. Use the Think, Check, Submit checklist developed by the scholarly publishing organizations. The Think, Check, Submit will give you some at thinkchecksubmit.org. They'll give you some things to ponder there. Check the journal. Do your colleagues know about the journal? Ask your colleagues or your professors if they've ever heard of this journal. Can you identify with the publisher and with the editorial board? Do you know people on the board? Are they reputable people? And that's why I'm on 15 boards right now, okay? Once you get on one, it's just like, it kind of explodes. And that is something, as a new person out there, you do want to get on boards of journals. Is the journal clear about the peer review it uses? Are the articles indexed? What are their fees? Again, do you recognize the board member? And are they part of the industry? Are they in lists with other journals? Are they ranked with other journals and things like that? Someone just wrote to me who's an editor of several journals and asked me for a copy of this article because today there's a big focus on journals being overpriced. And Elsevier out of the UK has now formed a new agreements with many different states, like California. So we're not going to have any of these journals in, And so some of the journals are starting to rethink open access and making some articles open access, or what they do is they embargo the article for a year and make it not open access till it's out for a year or two, and then they make it open access. So I just want to point that out, that more and more journals are moving towards open access because people are not willing to pay this amount anymore. Or I think it's called green and gold. In one case, if you pay a small fee as the author, they'll make it open access. And these are highly reputable journals. They're struggling with this and dealing with this, but they're also making a lot of money. All these publishers are making money off of all our work, all our sweat, all our intellect, all our time. We're doing for free for them. And so that article in the Chronicle of Higher Ed talks about this turning point, this new age, and we need to rethink. So that's why I just stuck that in late last night. I just threw that one in there. Selecting a journal, again, you can look at Bell's list of predatory journals and publishers. You can look at the Directory of Open Access Journals, for which are high quality, and then you finally have to take a plunge. Not plunge your toilet with your paper, but take the plunge and try and publish your paper. In some cases, you might contribute a chapter to someone who made an announcement about a special book that they're working on. That's one way to start and get in there. Looking for opportunities to publish pieces of your dissertation, divide it up into different pieces. Maybe something's in a more practical journal. Something might be maybe a couple of theoretical, or one theoretical for your lit review, and then two from your research data. Even doing book reviews gets you started. And even just doing, even though Amazon doesn't count for book, it gets you started in writing and putting something up. But doing a book review, journals oftentimes are looking for people to do book reviews. You don't believe, I mean, even Ed Researcher, the top journal in the field of, the most subscribed journal. I went to the board meeting last year and they said, we're looking for people to do book reviews, but they have to be general books that appeal across a wide spectrum. That'd be a real great way to get your name out there and so forth. Conduct an interview. I've gotten many. Meena interviewed me and my team on our MOOCs book and got her one of her first publications by doing the interview, and it got republished it was in China, it got republished in the US with permission. So interviewing someone famous or people or and so forth can get you started. Write a major grant proposal gets you starter text. It forces you to get that deadline and write something down. Take a lead in doing a special journal issue. If you're at a conference on a symposium, you might look at everybody on the symposium panel and say, hey, maybe we could do this as a special journal issue together. And I've been on a couple of those where that happened. I was discussant once, and I ended up doing the lead article because I was the discussant. I could, share what was in every article. Edit a book. I think my number one way in which I started getting known was I edited a book in 1998 featuring articles and chapters from people in this building, students and at IU in general, but it was all IU based. It was called Electronic Collaborators. And that book, people still reference today. I'm working on a book on MOOCs and open education in the Global South now. The lead person, Dr. Ka Zhang, read my book as a grad student. She's still got it on the shelf, and we talk about it all the time. That edited book with Lawrence Earlbaum, which was the top publisher at the time, they're now part of Routledge. That got me known. Sole author a book's harder. It's harder than editing a book. Editing a book's not so hard, but current one has about 30 chapters. That's a little bit hard. 12 chapters, which my first one had, or 13 or 14, whatever, that was a bit easier. Get your name out there somewhere. Author a blog is another way that people might cite you, and you don't have to do a lot for your blog. I do about once a month, if that. But, if there's something that doesn't really quite fit an article and doesn't quite, fit a book chapter, and it's something that's kind of interesting, you might put in your blog post that people might find it interesting to read and get your name out there. Write editorials, maybe. That may be later in your career, writing editorial pieces in the New York Times and things like that. When you do a single authored book, oftentimes your publicist will have you do that kind of stuff. Write book reviews and software reviews. Software reviews is also a publication, and you could try and do that for Tech Trends or some other journal out there. So now I want you to take that index card, the second index card. You have a white one next to you. And if you're coming online, I want you to commit to one or two things that you are going to do during the next 4 months to the end of August. A couple of things you're going to do writing-wise. Help your brain, I have cookies. Now, I want you to take those writing tips, and we'll change this. Two of you here. two of you here, and Omida and Ronoza, since you guys know each other. And what's on your sheet? Two of you here. And those watching remotely, type in your chat window. You're missing out on cookies, but you also should be missing out on something more fruity, if you like.
So I was trying to idea about like
So I had taken
some
changes to it.
one
And then
in this
I
summer.
started
Just to have like I felt it was from them. I wrote like 3 years ago. Now I'm just wondering which kind of methodology
Start with your dad.
I'm not sure.
So my plan is to talk to a professor. So I don't want
I'll take your time for writing.
writing.
I don't know. So
Deciding on
Maybe I should think about it. My schedule and
so far I haven't
then
decided. So these two pieces to start with.
Okay, this is just my first year PhD program. So my plan is to put my ideas together and talk about them and present to
where who I'm reading, where we are publishing.
professors.
I want to
work with and then see what they think, so that I can get started. And I actually had one submit an idea to a journal. I talked to one of my professors, took her class, and I was talking to her saying, after we finished the course, I asked her, hey, could we turn this into a paper or something? And then she said, yes. And then we just get started, and we've been working together for this past semester. And then next week we're going to meet with each other again. And then probably we're going to submit over summer. Yes. Yeah.
You're so lucky.
And then we were working together. Thank you. We got a design contest competition thing going on. Yeah. So he was looking for
Okay.
someone to work with. So I was working with him to come up with a
Things making sense so far? Helpful?
Yes.
You know, this is kind of A to Z in terms of writing and publishing in a way on this. Things you're committing to? Donoza,
My plans for summer?
finishing your spring classes?
Yeah, finishing my spring classes and reading more.
Reading more. I'm going to come back to reading more. Jennifer, committing to what?
What
Yeah.
do you want me to? So I'd like to turn my first draft of my first author study into a conference paper.
Or a journal article. We've talked about that the other day. So I figured that's what you had. Khadija?
Authoring a blog.
Authoring a blog. Okay. What do you got?
I need to decide on a piece and start. I already have the first draft as a final paper for
Yeah.
course. Now I need to rewrite it, changing the methodology.
Okay. Keep going. Yeah. Keep the momentum. Don't give up on something. You know, we'll go through some writing tips and insights. Learning how to write like a machine? Well, I'm not so sure we're all going to write like machines out there, but there are some days I feel like I'm a machine. When you edit a 30-chapter book, let me tell you, and you have to rewrite 5 of them almost sentence by sentence, the whole chapter that they've written, you kind of start feeling like a machine. And we got one more coming in tonight at midnight from Chile, so we'll see what that looks like. But let's look at some writing tips. Write more, write even more than that. Write when you don't want to, write when you do. Write when you have something to say, write when you don't. Write every day, keep writing. So, you know, what's interesting with blogs and with discussion forums, young people today don't realize how much they are writing, and with social media and all sorts of things. If I had told them they'll be writing so many thousand words in my class, and it's all in the Canvas discussion forums, they would have dropped the class the first week. But thousands and thousands of words we're writing in these. The way I do some of my writing and successfully is I still have a paper planner. Many of you have electronic planners, but I have 3 calendars at home in front of my desk. One for last month, one for this month and one for the month after that, or I move it around. So I have 90 days sitting in front of me, and I'm thinking all the time, instead of just having the current month in front of me with a calendar, I buy 3 calendars. Probably need 4 calendars, and then it helps me kind of situate in what I'm working on and what I'm thinking about, what I'm going to accomplish and what I'm going to do. I mark days in my planner of what I'm going to accomplish, and the reason I'm here today and not next week is because, gosh, I'm hoping that, at some point next week I can start rolling with, well, actually what I'm going to do is do my syllabi for fall and have that out of the way. So come August, when everyone else is scrambling, working on their syllabi, I'm going to be still writing. So I'm going to knock that out and get that done early on. But having that time, you have to have that devotion, that set time. And for a while, I jogged every day about 6 miles. I'd wake up in the morning. For a year, I was writing my World is Open book, and in 2008, 9, I ran every day. First thing, got my brain cleared up, and then started writing. And I didn't realize my feet got sore, that I had plantar fasciitis. I didn't realize what that was. But for many of us, we wake up in the morning and we do what? We check email. I do this too. And you get 100 emails a day like I get to respond to. It can take hours getting through all that, and that's why I tend to do that early, get that out of the way, and then the night I'm spending mostly I'm doing writing and getting other things, so it's not on the back of my brain kind of stuff. Also, you might get a lot of spam emails. What I did a couple of summers ago is I went to unsubscribe to a lot of things. So my credit cards would send me stuff, the hotels I was in before would send me stuff. You wouldn't believe how much less email you'll get by just going to your junk mail and going to your delete box and looking at and opening them up and going to unsubscribe, unsubscribe, unsubscribe. It reduced the quantity of email I was getting tremendously, and it freed up a lot of time. So that's one little tip today. It might sound like it has nothing to do with writing, but you know how spam can look. Maintain a list of potential collaborators that you might work with, researchers that you might want to work with, your network, in effect, that's out there. Life's full of people who are egomaniacs or people who lie. You don't need to work with them. There are 7 billion people on the planet. There's a few good people you can find to work with. You only need to find a few. Avoid the people that are there to use you or are there and they're really not sure what their goals are and so forth. Find people that have some similar goals and similar ideas and similar perspectives on things and work with them. And you'll find oftentimes it's the people you went to graduate school with that might become your lifelong colleagues in many ways. So Dr. Tom Reynolds and I went and co-dissertated a long time ago and developed a keystroke mapping program in writing and prompting program. Now we're working on our 3rd or 4th book project together with this MOOCs and Open Ed book. And so I know him fairly well after all this time. And we can tell each other and kid each other and joke with each other without upsetting each other, So if you have someone who's worked with for a long period of time, you don't have to worry about, ruffling any feathers or getting people upset because you have intersubjectivity, you have mutual knowledge, and that helps go a long way. So find some people, find a couple people you'll work with once or twice, but find other people that you'll work with over a series of things and so forth. Draft a timeline of your goals. Think about what is the project I'm going to finish this year and map them out. I recommend a 3-year timeline of publishing and realize that 3-year timeline is going to change and the things that are listed in there are going to change. But being flexible, delete stuff and add stuff. I mean, there are things that my team has worked on this year that I had no clue a year ago we were going to work on. I had a plan about what we're doing in terms of the big stuff, but in terms of the small stuff, I mean, I'm editing 30 chapters while we have 7 articles in review right now, and I got several others we're working on, so it's about 40 different manuscripts I've been working on in 1 year. It's a little bit much. I don't recommend that. I'm probably my last edited book for quite a long time, I think, if ever. But in terms of your articles themselves, if you look at that, here we've got data's collected, first draft, share your manuscript, draft, revise, submit for review. What stage is that article at along that process? And map that out. This gives you your commitments. This gives you your goals. This gives you something visual to look at. And maybe you share it in one of these websites that have shareable goals like 43 Things or Milestone Planner or I Done This or Joe's Goals. They have social networks around to help you reach those goals and that kind of thing. There's a website that I found a year ago from Daniel Pink, who has the book Drive, and a couple other books out there. He's using a website called Future Me. And he writes letters to his future self, and then he gets an email 6 months later, or 3 months later, or 1 year later, have you met those goals? That's kind of an interesting little website. And there's also a website out there for when you die, you can send out emails to all your enemies out there, but don't do that. But send an email to yourself or to your students, maybe future student. Think ahead about potential publishing of everything that you do. Everything is possible. And I mean, in education, every movie that you watch is about education. I mean, there's a teacher in there somewhere, or a tutor, or a trainer, or somebody. Well, the same is true of pretty much any data you collect. There's a potential for it. You have to figure out where that might go. What's the potential publishing? Now, you don't want to get so fixated on that's all you're thinking about. You don't want instrumental reasons, or you're just doing it to get reward. But you do have to start thinking about where this piece might go and what audience might it fit. Here's a little joke here. Before grad school, you can see on the far left here, I'm doing research whatever I want. I'm going to research before grad school. I'm going to research whatever my professor wants. I'm going to research whatever my tenure committee wants, assistant professor. I'm going to research whatever my grant committee wants, tenured professor. I'm going to research whatever, emeritus professor, rest and he dies. So this, when you get depressed, and it will happen, that something doesn't get published that you've worked really hard on, or that you lose control over your life because you're doing other people's projects, OPPs. My first job after graduating was at West Virginia University, and I did other people's projects. First week I met 2 people, and I'd week up create a learning center for kids at risk, and we were publishing related to that. It's a long story. We ended up in a lawsuit against each other because some of my colleagues were trying to publish with their names higher, and they didn't do any work. I mean, it was other people's project. It was a big issue, and part of the reason I came to Indiana, because I didn't want to be part of that. I refused to publish stuff, and they tried suing me to get me to publish the work that it's a bit of a longer story than that, but I was found to be correct, and then I left. So you can get on other people's stuff, other people's projects pretty easily, especially at Indiana on research teams, because everyone's on a research team, and that's other people's stuff. You lose control, you lose your own voice. So you'll notice my teams are run a little differently. I have, more virtual meetings, and I organize things much, much differently than other, partly because of this early experience. This article came out a couple weeks ago, a month ago, in Inside Higher Ed. And this article was about the field of sociology. In the field of sociology, there's the same number of jobs out there by year. This is the number of jobs by year, and these are universities. Wisconsin has the most sociologists, and then you see some of these other universities out there, UCLA and Duke and so forth. This is not the chart I want to show you. This is just showing you that sociology jobs, same number of jobs. But what happens is, new assistant professors in 1990s, this is how many articles they were publishing. In 2015, this is how many. Newly minted associate professors, this is how many now. It's a big change. And the big change is coming in journals that were never sociology journals, as opposed to journals that became sociology, or the traditional sociology journals are still there. But there's a lot of new journals people are publishing in because of the publisher perish syndrome that we're in today. And you can see that the mean numbers over time, mean number of publications by type and year, shown as new assistant professors left and newly promoted associate professors from 14.5 to 18. So you got 4 more publications to get tenure than you had to in the past. And for assistants from 3 to 8, although mean number of publications, by type and year. By type and year, not the number per year. What does the 8 mean? Let's see what that means here. This number is 45 people publishing 8. That would be low in our field of education to get tenure. The number of publications by type and year shown as never assistant, newly promoted in the right. Okay, in the blue, other peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, books. Okay, so these are peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, books, other publications, total. So here's a quote from that article. What does it look like exactly? In 2017, new assistant professors at 21 departments included in the study had published 4.8 peer-reviewed articles on average. This is on their start date. When they started, I was looking at when they started the job. So the number of articles required to even get a position has gone up. Published 4.8 peer-reviewed articles. About 25 years ago, it was 2.5. So when I graduated, they were saying 3 articles published, that's all you need. 2.5, 3 articles. Newly promoted associate professors in article-centric fields in 2010s also published almost as many peer-reviewed articles as their counterparts 2 decades later. And even in book-centered fields, the number of peer-reviewed articles has risen. Newly promoted associate in article-centric fields had published almost as many peer-reviewed articles as counterparts 2 decades earlier. Okay. Asked whether he thought the findings would apply to social science field, Warren said he suspected a larger macro forces at work, which really have to do with organization and financing of higher ed, at least in other social sciences. In any case, sociologists now face a much greater publisher perish and to publish often. And so this is happening over and over. Asked why the piece of his study, Warren said the findings have potential human consequences. It gets very stressful and it pushes qualified people out of the field. People are leaving because they can't meet the standards. Expectation creep has also implications in the quality of scholarship, which demands quantity, and for topics sociologists may choose to study, and for the topics we may choose to study. So people are publishing a lot and just picking a topic that can get published, picking a popular topic or a current topic, even if they're not interested in it. And so that's a problem. In other words, the trend towards more publications might also mean a trend towards topics or approaches that ensure quicker and more publication. That's another issue and all that. So I just threw that in there last night. That was just an article that came out a month ago in, as I said, in Inside Higher Ed. Number 5 tip, and this is in your tips list of 20 tips or on the back of the list, be a bumblebee or a butterfly. A bumblebee goes from room to room at conferences and listens and sits in the back room and goes to another room and just listens and fly, being a butterfly, just looking over the top, flying and coming down and going back up, looking at the big picture view and coming down. Try to do both in some ways. Try and do the big picture kinds of stuff and looking at the overview, but also try and be a bumblebee going from room to room and just bouncing around at different things and just seeing what comes up. And accumulating, just saving, accumulating, and so forth. Find, save, and use starter texts. I've already talked about this before. Starter texts can go a long ways with saving your brain some, anti-stressor. It reduces the stress. And it makes you feel a little happier. And like Tom Hanks in the movie there, he's looking for words to say. What was that movie, Sleepless in Seattle or something like that? Always scan the reference sections of other articles. When you look at the reference sections, you'll find out a lot about where people are publishing, what topics are popular, what trends have happened over time, because you can look at the dates in which things are published. Avoid high-quality journal fixations. I had a colleague in counseling and ed psych that graduated with me at Wisconsin a long time ago, and she was focused, like Wisconsin, on only SSCI journals, only the top-tier journals. And, when, tenure time came up, she hadn't published in tier 2 journals or tier 3 journals and things like that, which are also important, right? And so if you only focus on SSCI and top tier journals, you might not be open to other things. You got to be open to almost any possibilities for publishing today. Yes, you want the SSCI, you can pick those out, but you don't need to only focus on that. And being a second or third author is okay too, because you can't be first author of everything. Finding your role and your niche is really critical. What are you comfortable with? Right now, for me, I like writing the beginning and ending of articles. I used to like writing the lit review. I no longer like writing the lit review. I can do okay on the method, but I let other people do the method. I'm really good. Find your strength. What is the thing that you're good at? Everyone might have a different strength. Mina's really good at interviewing people. Okay, she's interviewed 48 people just in our MOOC research. Now she's doing more on gamification. But she's got a good strength in translating those transcripts and getting those and all that. If you need summer money, teach intensive courses. So teach early in the summer. Teach a 3-week course or a 6-week and save the last 8 weeks for writing. Don't teach a 6-week course and then an 8-week course. That's the whole summer then. It's gone. And you become the class. See, if it's a 6-week, you're going to be teaching every day. That's why I taught 8-day courses. Get them done, get paid, and then have time to spend time with family and write and other things and go outside and relax. Edit your papers a lot. So in my dissertation research, we found there are two kinds of writers, actually more than that. There are Mozartians that think ahead, plan ahead, have the whole text ready, and then they plop it all down when they write, like Mozart did in writing his music. There were Beethovenians who tinkered at the point of utterance, constantly changing and editing and over and over again. And then there are combiners, people who can do a bit of both, okay? I'm more of a Beethovenian. Beethoven never felt he was done. He was constantly going back. You see his picture right there on the bottom right. Cool guy. You notice he has a smartphone. He's got some cool glasses, too. I got to get make my cool glasses. Give Raj some glasses. Wear some glasses. Jennifer gets some glasses, okay? So put them on, Raj. Don't be shy. And if we pull around this way, the camera will get you right on the screen. Everyone there, we can all wave at everyone on the screen. Jennifer over here, too. She's got the glasses on, too. Okay, all right. So Beethoven wore his glasses, and he had his smartphone. And many of you write notes on your smartphones, too. My colleague Tom Reynolds had a computer break. His grandson stood on his computer on Saturday morning while he's writing the last chapter of our book, and he lost all his work. And I said, how are you going to write? And he says, I'm using my smartphone to write right now. But he bought a new computer last night. But people use different instruments to write. You have note cards in front of you. You have other ways that might help shape up your writing. 6 ways to shape up your writing. This is an article from Fernanda Zamudio Suarez. She says, here are 6 things that you can do. So the Chronicle of Higher Ed, we got 15 minutes left. I may have time to show one video. She's got 3. Let's see if I can play this. Well, it doesn't want to let us do that. Well, that's fine. You can play this. She's got videos that explain writing and the writing process, and she does a quite good job. Maybe if I end in time, I'll come back and hit this. And they're very short, and she's very young. She's trying to inspire young people to become writers. So I recommend that you guys, young people out there, watch this one. Here are 6 tips. Writing is an exercise, so you got to write. You got to do it. Set goals based on output, not input. 3 pages double-spaced. Okay, so set your goals. Find a voice. Don't just write to get published, but find your voice, your perspective, your ideas, your personality should come out a bit. Give yourself time, not deadlines. Give yourself time, like planning in your planner, time to do that. Pick a puzzle. Your writing is an answer to that puzzle. What's controversial? What's a gap? What's a hole? What are people wanting? What's missing? Find those gaps and where you have an expertise. Like a decade ago, I read a piece about high schools, cyber high schools, and why kids would go to cyber high school. And it became an article in a newsletter somewhere, and I still go back and look. That's a pretty good time. They said 10 reasons. There are expat kids that are overseas that might want to keep up with what's happening in the U.S. There are kids who are bullied, women who get pregnant. Kids who are health problems, all sorts of reasons why it's cyber high school. So just, if you pick a puzzle, why would people do that? Edit your work like Beethoven. She has another piece that came out. These are little 2-minute tips. She has another one on your philosophy statement. It's a really good one that she wrote. And then she had another one on how to become a highly productive writer. Let's see if this one, let me just see. I bet you that we get the same error message, but let me just try. But she's done a series of these out there. Number 12, organize conference symposia. I've done them many times, pre-conferences. And we've turned pre-conferences into special journal issues. We turned pre-conferences into books. You meet people at a pre-conference session or a symposia. I've done both, pre-conference symposia. And the current book I'm working on comes out of pre-conference symposia. And we had people from around the world in the global south. We got Sri Lanka, Nepal, Egypt, Fiji, Indonesia, Malaysia, Kenya, Somalia, Turkey, India, blanking on some of the other ones. But a number of people attended this thing virtually, and we got to know them. So this can lead to special books, journal issues, all sorts of things, or just new friendships, just meeting new people. When you become a professor, don't be afraid to sponsor a person or two every once in a while. I do too much of this, but people who come over from overseas, from another place, might want to work on a paper with you, and they'll do some work. They might be professors. They might be on a final leg of a project. You can jump in. Don't jump in if it's requiring you to do a lot of work, but if it's going to have you edit and add to a paper he or she's already working on, that's pretty simple. I've gotten several things. In fact, yeah, I've got several things out there from visiting scholars that have worked with me. One on flipped classrooms in China, one on open education and MOOCs in China, and so forth, as Mayno will remember a couple of those. Try to publish your paper before a conference. This is a big one. I had a huge problem in jumping to conference to conference to conference as a new faculty member. Huge problem. Oh, glassy-eyed over this one. Let me go. I'll go to this one. I'll go to that. It's really more advantageous to submit your article for publication before the conference starts. At least submit it. And that way you're committed to getting that done. If you don't submit it, you'll just go to the next conference, forget about that paper. And I had this problem. I would jump on, I jumped another one, I jumped another one, and I almost didn't get tenure for that reason. Okay, and that was one of the reasons. There was several reasons, but that was one of the big reasons. I've now got 340 publications. Okay, so I've learned from my early days all my mistakes. Like I said, some of the better ones never got published. Okay, so you learn. That's a bad habit. But submitting before the conference is a good habit. And there's several I've gotten accepted, and other people do that too. Now, you can't always do that. It says try to submit. Be creative somewhere. Something in what you're writing has to be creative, or why even bother? So a creative model, even a quote, an image, a framework, a chart, a table, something unique. There's not something unique, a unique story even. So we just added a story to the preface of the book. My colleague Tom Reynolds put a story in. I had written the preface, and we were like, the beginning's kind of boring. He had a story about being in Peru and a Fulbright scholar in 1998 and leaving a university that had been under military guard until the day he spoke there, had been under armed guards because of all the protests and wars going on and whatnot. And then he he went back to his hotel, and there were no lights except the little glowing lights in the distance. So he walked through the narrow corridor, and here are all people at an internet cafe, in the only lit part of the whole city. Everyone, this is 1998. So we start with this story, but interesting story. Something has to be creative. Something has to be unique. Something has to be something people can pull away. So in chapter 1, we've got a summary of where people are coming from. It's a nice little table of talking about what parts of the world the chapters relate to. That my colleague, Dr. Zhang, put together. Modify your environment. Create your own personal sandbox. What's the place that you'd like to work, a space that you'd like to work? And so I have a stand-up desk or a power hydro-lifted desk. I look over a woods, and I have a place that, and deer running back there and whatnot, and it's a nice little private space to work from. Do you have an idea for your story yet? No, I'm waiting for inspiration. You can't just turn on creativity like a faucet. You have to be in the right mood. You have to be in your right sandbox, your place, your space. For me, it's running before going to my sandbox and before I go to write. But don't, but what's to say? Don't modify it too much. Don't fall asleep, which can happen. Don't give up. So not only do I try and submit articles before a conference, I also try not to give up on an article. It's rare for me not to publish an article. It's very rare for us to give up. We have to find a journal somewhere, someplace. And so that's important. Is there a meeting in here at 1? Okay. Be polite and thankful to your editors and to the journal people out there. Be very polite. Don't create negative tensions out there. This is an extremely important thing. Mayna's really good at writing thank yous to people and all this, but start your art. Thank you for the notes. Thank you for the reviewer comments. Thank you for all that. Recap the reviewer points and what they had to say. This is what you said. I'm going to recap these. I'm going to talk about, and this is what we covered, kind of thing. Here's how we address them. Recap those reviewer points. Let's recap. Here's what we've done, and then you're more likely to get accepted if you've done that. There's an article from Kathy Davidson, who's pretty famous, that came out a couple months ago, From Dreaded to Amazing. And in this article, she talks about how to address reviewer comments. How I keep a clean original manuscript. I make an online copy of the manuscript, in different colors and sizes and margins, and here's how I edit and all this. I have 4 categories of things. I cut and paste them into things that are praise, things that are easy to do and fixable. So praise for my article is category 1. Number 2 is easy things to do. Number 3 are large conceptual changes. And number 4, she calls paranoid responses from the reviewers that she doesn't want to change maybe. So she has 4 different categories of the kinds of changes that she can make. And number 2 is easy to do. And so 1, yeah, you put those up and say thank you for the praise. Number 2, yeah, you make those little things like changing your sentence structure or the wording or commas or whatever it is. And then you can work on number 3. Do the simple things first and get them out of the way. So Tackling Revisions is an article that came out May 24th. I've got that article with me in here, and she talks about in this article from Boston College, cutting part of the introduction, having an overall game plan. She has, read your article aloud so you can hear how it sounds. Cut up some of the pieces out there of the article and put them in paper slips in front of you and look at them. And read every article as a peer reviewer. Instead of reading it as you're the writer, read it as if you're the one critiquing the article. Catalog the problems on a scale of 1 to 3. 1 take less than 30 minutes to fix, 2s take 2 hours, 3s takes more time. Fix the easy ones, take breaks. Share your publication efforts. Have celebrations on what's going on. Put them in Facebook. We do this all the time. We put a little notice up there, celebrate with your friends, celebrate your accomplishments. But, here's my brothers and my nephew at a wedding. They're pointing to my book, The World is Open, that was in the restaurant. It was the book cover, actually. That's my brother here, my nephew here, my niece here. They're all a couple months ago or a year ago looking at a wedding where that was on display. And then what happens when you're a full professor? Well, then you have more time to write, right? Again, don't celebrate too much. Here's some 10 bonus ones real quick. Be careful about getting on other people's projects, as I mentioned earlier, okay? Number 2, look for special journals to submit to, special journals you can contribute to, and so forth. Number 3, we're on the bonus ones. We're almost done. Save research articles for a rainy day. So put them in a file folder and save them and pull them out when you need to. Treat graduate students as colleagues and peers, which they are, and you'll treat everyone as a colleague that's out there. The Importance of Friendships article came out on February 24th. Making friends is key to being published. Don't work by yourself. Work with others. Find a mentor, and the mentor is not just about productivity goals, but the mentor is about your expectations. The big, this article is a really good one to read. This one here, dear faculty, you matter more than you think, and that article gets at that issue about mentoring and goal setting and a mentor pushing you to have bigger goals and bigger things to try and do. Form a writing group maybe for your dissertation and other things. The value of dissertation writing groups, for me, I had one colleague and he and I worked together and met in his office at night. Others have 3 or 4 people. Write for general public sometimes. That's okay. More and more people are writing for the general public. There's an article that came out in March, Writing for Peers versus the Public. You might read that article. The professor who quit his tenured job and did podcasts and general public things and lectures. That's another recent article. Keep your thinking in a notepad. There's an article called Slouching for Productivity where they talk about keeping your ideas in a notepad and engaging in free writing from time to time, and then read everything, as you pointed out earlier. Just keep reading and writing down, taking notes. So that's some of the publication process, the writing tips, the curated resources, and all that kind of stuff. I'm sorry we're being kicked out of the room here. It seems like I didn't know we had another thing going on right after this. So any comments or questions? We got 2 minutes. What? Yeah, was that helpful?
It was great help.
There's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of things going on, and hopefully you all can become more successful, and those people watching remotely can be more successful, and so forth. And I want to thank everyone for coming, versus remote people as well as people in the room. And we do have cookies left and things like that. So why don't you open up the door so people can come in? Someone can stop the Zoom recording here. Khadijah, you want to stop the Zoom? Someone can stop the Zoom recording. I'm sure they're getting antsy in the back there. Outside there. thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bonk.
Thank you.
There's some,
Need any of these papers?
if you could put a rubber band around those.
Yeah, no, we can have to do the green stuff. Yeah, they can go back. Take a photo, do you want?
Me? Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to use them at the end, but it's okay. Jennifer, you might want to subscribe to that. I brought that to you.
Doesn't offer enough place to hide in the back.
Yeah.
I usually go by the door.
That's true.
Scope those ones out.
And you get the book, right?
I'll take
Okay.
it.
Don't get me in the hallway. Wait, I sign. Go ahead.
You're good.
Take your time, take your time, get
You're
your,
good.
your Sharpies, not Sharpies. Come here.
What's in the room here?
In here?
Yeah. Yeah, our thing ended at 1, so we're, yeah.
We're good. We're good.
My coffee and
I probably have it in here. Let's go over here, I'll sign the card.
Would anybody like an agenda? You all set with everything?
Did you come here with an agenda, Marlene?
I did. Yeah, I did.
It's all right.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Who's joining us virtually?
Nobody that I know of.
Oh, okay.
That's left over
Oh,
from another
gotcha.
meeting.
Okay, so it's safe to sit on that side of the room? That's what
Yes.
I'm wondering about.
I think it's safe.
Do it, but then it looks like I'm
And this?
important and I want to stay here. I don't want to appear that I'm in charge of it. Okay, cool.
Hey, so you're still on the R&D committee? But Jane says, because they're not gonna take, you're by the Constitution, you're allowed to be on the R&D
Oh,
committee.
geez. Oh, okay.
But you could ask to be removed,
Removed. Okay.
and then we would need to replace you.
I don't really care. I mean, it's not like a huge load. But would you like some new blood that's not tainted by being on the dark side of administration?
You know what, they concern me that there's two people down on.
There's this one for you. Looks like that might be Scott.
Yeah, sure. No, that's true.
How you doing?
And then we have
Okay.
Derek is on this.
Hanging in there,
As
as you know, trying to figure all this stuff out.
I know.
Yeah, no, that's right. And Derek